Hi everyone, and welcome to this episode of The Author's Journey. I'm your host, Mony Dojeiji. And one of the great things I love about having this show and speaking to authors is not only learning about their books and about their journeys, but also seeing how they're also using their platform and their content for their philanthropic efforts. My guest today is doing exactly that. I'm so delighted to have with me Barry Finlay. Barry, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Well, great to have you here. Now, you have several books that we have on the table, and we're going to talk about all of them. And you've written across a couple of different genres.
Right.
But what I want to do is just learn first more about you and your story and how you came about to be a writer.
Yeah, we have to go way back, I think, for to understand that. I think I was born and raised on a farm in rural Manitoba, a place called Rapid City, Manitoba, which is just north of Brandon. And my father was always working, being a farmer, and my brothers were much older than I was. So my mother ended up spending a lot of time with me before I got to school, teaching me how to read and write. And before I ever got there, I think I could read and write thanks to her. And it sort of instilled in me, I think, the fact that I wanted to write, that I enjoyed writing, I enjoyed reading. And then I found out over time that farming wasn't for me, and so at 18 I moved into Winnipeg and became a chartered accountant. Got a job with the federal government, worked with them for about 32 years, and during that time, 10 years of the 32, I was writing financial policy.
Which is quite unlike writing any other kind of...
It's very unlike it, and nobody wants to read it unless they absolutely have to, but I think it honed my writing skills. I learned how to write a complex subject, write about a complex subject in sort of layman's terms.
Okay.
And I think because of that, it honed my writing skills. It was kind of the school of hard knocks in writing. And so I worked for the government for 32 years, and then kind of changed my life when I retired. And I ended up climbing a mountain and wrote a book as a result of that climb. And found out how enjoyable it was to write, and so I've been continuing to write ever since then. Yeah,
well, that journey that you talk about is the foundation of your first book, which is called Kilimanjaro and Beyond, a life-changing journey. This is the book right here. So tell me what inspired you to go climbing one of the, well, not the highest peak in the world, but definitely one of the high peaks in the world.
Yeah,
what inspired you to do that?
It's the fourth highest.
Yeah.
And I'd never climbed a mountain before. I guess it all started, I went to the doctor, and he told me my triglycerides were elevated, and the only way to deal with that was through exercise and diet.
Yes.
So I took him at his word, and on the way home I stopped at the gym and signed on with a personal trainer. And it turned out she was a 21-year-old woman who just about killed me at the beginning. But over time, my health started to improve, my lifestyle started to improve, and we'd been talking with her son about, he'd been in South Africa years before, and somebody wanted him to climb Kilimanjaro at that time, and he didn't have the time or the money or whatever to do it. But it had always been stuck in the back of his mind, so that kind of came back to me after the visit to the doctor and after my health improved. I asked him if he wanted to do it, and he decided that he did. He had a 1-year-old at the time, so it was a big sacrifice for him, or a big commitment. And he decided that we should do it, so off we went. And
did you just go from one day to the next to climb the mountain? Did you not train or anything in advance?
It took me a year, a good year, to get in shape to train. Being an accountant, I sat behind a desk for many years, so I wasn't in the best of shape.
Yeah.
But the personal trainer took care of that, and a lot of training over the course of that year.
Okay.
And I think I was pretty well ready to go by the time we did the climb.
And how old was your son at that time?
He was 30.
He was, okay.
Yeah.
And so what was it like climbing Kilimanjaro? What was that experience like?
It's not a technical climb. You don't need ropes and crampons and things like that. There's a trail up the mountain. There's, well, actually a choice of trails. Okay. The difficulty is the altitude. It's 19,340 feet. So when we actually flew into the mountain, we flew in below the mountaintop. We could actually look up at the mountaintop as we were flying in. Oh. And my son said to me, "What have we done?" As we're flying by the mountaintop. But so it's the altitude. that is the problem, and fatigue. We were on the mountain for 7 days up, going up, 2 days coming down. And so we were on the mountain for a long time, and it was the last 600 feet are really tough.
What do you remember of those last 600 feet, that last climb to get to the top?
What really sticks out in my mind is we were at the camp just before the final ascent, and we had been climbing all day. It was a long climb that day, and we'd climbed through the clouds and fog, and we couldn't really see much. We couldn't see where we were going. And so we stopped for the day, and we went into the mess tent to have our meal. And when we came out, everything had cleared, and we could see the top, we could see where we were going, and it was just such a fantastic moment when we could actually see where we'd been. We could look down the mountain, we could look up the mountain, and to see where we were going was just a fantastic feeling. A little bit frightening because we still had that final ascent to do. But that was a big moment that stuck out in my mind.
Do you have to have oxygen when you're climbing at those levels?
We had a guide with us who had a oxygen hyperbaric chamber, and portable stretcher, and our porter, and he went with us right up to the top of the mountain. Wow. After we had made the ascent, after we'd reached the top, we went back down to the next camp. And we were sitting there sort of enjoying the sun and patting ourselves on the back, and they took my blood pressure and heart rate and so on, and all of a sudden I had tubes up my nose, so so I had to have oxygen at that point.
Yeah.
And there were 3 climbers in all, 18 porters and 2 guides and 3 climbers, so we were pretty well looked after.
Yeah, well supported on your way.
Yes, but so the other 2, Chris and the other fellow we were climbing with, were kind of laughing after they realized I was going to be okay. They were giving me a hard time about having oxygen, and then we went into the mess tent again, and they were tested, and they had to have oxygen too. So I didn't feel so bad.
Yeah. So then, were you keeping a journal or a diary as you were climbing?
I was, not a detailed diary, and we found the higher we climbed. Chris was probably better at keeping a diary than I was. We found the higher we went, the worse our notes got. And I think it was just a matter of fatigue. And Chris said when he looked back at his notes, he couldn't understand what he was writing as we got closer to the top. So.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
I'm sure there were other priorities at that time beyond just keeping a good journal and penmanship.
Breathing was a priority.
Good priority. That's a good priority to have.
Yeah.
Now, I know that part of the climb was a personal quest to do that, but that you also had a fundraising motive behind this as well. Do you want to tell me about that aspect of that journey?
Yeah, the mountain came first. We decided we wanted to climb, but then when we agreed we were going to climb, we decided we'd use the mountain as a platform for raising money for something. And so we got together, and we both wanted to do it for kids, and we wanted to do it for education for kids.
Yeah.
So we had no idea how much money we could raise. We decided to put the donors' names on a Canadian flag.
Okay.
And
so all the donors' names were on a flag?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we did that, and we actually raised $15,000 before we left. And it was just,
great.
I think it was the fact that people were interested in what we were doing, and maybe they wanted their name on the Canadian flag that was going to the top of the mountain. But we ended up with 200 donors and raised $15,000. When we decided we were going to raise money for kids, we looked at child-sponsored or child organizations that raise money for kids.
Yep.
And we found about 5 that we were interested in working with. I sent out letters to the 5. I got a response from 1, and the one was Plan Canada. And I was familiar with Plan from before because we have a foster child through Plan.
Yes.
So we connected with them, and so we've been raising money for Plan Canada ever since.
And so does a percentage of the sales of your books go towards Plan?
Percentage of the profits from
all
the
the
books.
Profits from the books. Well, congratulations.
A percentage, yeah.
That's fantastic. And you chose one that was in Tanzania, is that right?
Yes.
Because that will tie into another one of your books that comes in the future.
Yeah.
So you raise the funds, and did you end up going to Tanzania to deliver the funds there and see the school or whatever?
Yeah, the mountain, half of the mountain is in Tanzania and half of it's in Kenya.
Yes.
So, but our project was in a place called Mwanza, Tanzania, which is on Lake Victoria.
Yeah.
It's a freshwater lake, and it's one of the most polluted lakes in the world. So the school is actually on the lake, or at least beside the lake, but they can't use the water.
Right.
Because it's so polluted. So we raised money for the classroom. We presented the flag to the school. And I was standing in front of the class and speaking to them, and I realized, I just looked out at the faces and saw the optimism and enthusiasm, and they had nothing.
Wow.
And I just thought we could do something for them. And so that's why the fundraising has continued. And we actually went back in 2011 to see the results of our projects. And,
yes.
And we have another trip planned soon.
Good for you.
Yeah.
So then a percentage of the sales or the profits of all of your books that you've written is
Right.
going to support that school and perhaps other philanthropic activities that you have going on.
Yeah, we've
well.
completed 4 projects now
Okay.
in Tanzania. We also raised money for Wounded Warriors Canada. So in total, we've raised about 185, closer to 200,000, I guess.
Congratulations.
Since we started doing this in 2008. So, yeah, we continue to raise money. We've completed 4 projects, and we're kind of between projects now with Plant.
That must be incredibly satisfying.
Oh, it's there were 2 things I think that came out of the climb. One was I realized that you can do pretty much anything you want if you set your mind to it, and I think I'm going to be using that going forward.
Yeah.
I kind of developed a slogan, or a slogan came out of our climb, that every mountaintop is within reach if you just keep on climbing. And that's kind of my philosophy of life now. It's if you set your mind to something, you can do it.
That's fantastic.
And then the second one was I realized that we could help kids help people just by putting a little bit of effort into it.
Yeah.
And what we do is hold events and mobilize people to contribute to the events, and that's where most of the money comes from. But so yeah, that was the benefit of the climb. I call it a life-changing journey, and it really was.
Yeah, I have no doubt. And I guess it changed you in more than one way, not just simply the physical act of going and climbing a mountain, but how you choose now to spend your efforts and how you see how you're using your life in this moment right now.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, I know that you continue traveling because you didn't stop at Kilimanjaro,
Right.
and that's the foundation of your next book, which we're going to talk about. But I do have to take a quick break before we do so. So please stay tuned, everyone. And when we come back from break, we'll continue our conversation with author Barry Finlay. Welcome back to The Author's Journey, everyone, where I'm continuing my conversation with local author and philanthropist Barry Finlay. Now, Barry, you climbed Mount Kilimanjaro, which was a life-changing experience for you, but you didn't stop traveling, obviously.
Right.
It inspired philanthropy, but it inspired another journey. And this one is another memoir, which I love the title, which says, I guess I missed the boat. So, what boat did you miss? What's this story all about?
Well, I can't tell you whether we missed the boat or not because you have to read the book. But my wife and I travel with my in-laws.
Okay.
So there are many stories that come out of that.
I'm
my
sure.
in-laws are characters, and so this kind of chronicles some of the stories that came out of our journeys. Mm-hmm. It was originally written basically for the family to capture some of those moments, and it's turned out that a lot of people have an interest, and especially seniors, because we're all seniors. And all traveling together, and people seem to enjoy some of the stories that have come out of that.
Well, I'm sure travel, humor, adventure, all of that, everyone, I love those kinds of stories, and I love those kinds of journeys, and there's definitely some good tidbits
There are.
to be picked up from that.
Yeah.
Well, so your first couple of books were more memoirs, focused on personal experiences, personal journeys, but then you switched gears, and you moved into more of a mystery thriller kind of genre, and one of the first books that you wrote, I think, was A Perilous Journey, is that
Yes,
right?
Perilous
A Perilous
Question,
Question.
yes. Yeah.
A Perilous Question. And I love the title because my first question to you was, what's the perilous question?
Yeah.
And you answered in an interesting way. Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of relates to our fundraising. We were in Tanzania in 2011, and we were visiting a dormitory for 100 girls. There were 900 kids at the school, and there were about 500 girls. Almost all are orphans because of HIV. So it was a project that Plan Canada had done. We had nothing to do with this project, but it was a project that they had done. So the schoolgirls divided us up. 3 of them took me through the dormitory, 3 took my wife, and 3 took the representative from Plan Canada. At the end of the visit, one of the girls said to me, "So when are you taking me to Canada?" And I got the feeling she would have gone in a heartbeat.
Sure.
If I had told her, "I'll pick you up at midnight at the gate," she would have been there, because there was nothing to keep her in Tanzania. And she was looking for something better, and she saw that as a way out.
Right.
So that's where the book starts. It starts there. It's a book about human trafficking, and fortunately, that didn't happen as far as I know to the girl there. But
Right.
But that's the story of a perilous question.
Yeah. And how do you answer that question? Because I'm sure that's a question that must come up a great deal. I know when I've traveled overseas, when you go to countries such as this, that is one of the first things they tell you is, you're so lucky to have a Canadian passport. You're so
Right.
lucky to be able to travel wherever you want, whenever you want. And so it's a question that I've received personally as well. And
Yeah.
it's hard to answer that question honestly and to explain that you simply, it's just not possible. So how did you answer that?
Well, that's basically what I told her, was that it wasn't possible to do that. I did talk to Plan Canada afterwards and suggested that they might want to do some education in that regard.
Good idea.
And I think from a fundraising perspective, all we can do is help a few people. We can't save the world. We can help a handful of people, and if we do that, then it's a handful of people that wouldn't have been helped otherwise.
Well, exactly.
So I think that's about all we can do.
And that's powerful on its own. That's
It is.
we think oftentimes that we've got to do all these great, grand, big changes, but the changes that we make to one person's life, well, that's 1 or 2 or 3 people's lives that you've already changed.
Yeah,
and you don't know how
exactly.
that's going to move forward and change other people's lives as well.
Yeah, it
So
was
it's great.
interesting. I did talk to detectives for both my thrillers.
Yes.
I was fortunate enough to know somebody who connected me to the Ottawa Police Service.
Okay.
And I talked to a detective who was involved in human trafficking. And he said that quite often the girls won't testify because they consider what they're going through here to be better than what they would have had at home.
And that's
So-
that's unthinkable on
It is.
both counts, you know. So, well, that's a fascinating read. I'm sure that makes a fascinating story. But you turn it into a mystery, right?
Yes.
This is the first mystery book that you wrote.
Yeah, actually it was the second. The first one was The Vanishing Wife.
Okay, The Vanishing Wife, and then that one.
Yeah.
And so, what got you switching gears from writing memoirs into writing fiction?
I've always been a big fan of fiction, thrillers in particular.
Yeah.
I've got, I probably read 5 thrillers to every biography or autobiography or whatever. So, frankly, I wanted to challenge myself and see if I could do it. Being an accountant, accountants aren't supposed to be creative in most instances. So I wanted to try it and see if I could do it, and it worked out okay. There were a lot of challenges.
What? Tell me what.
Well, a lot of research, a lot of rewrites. I found ensuring there were no redundancies in the book, ensuring the plot line flowed, making sure there wasn't extraneous material or gaps. And that's frankly where a good editor comes in, because you do what you can, but there are ways of missing things.
Well, that's one of the consistent themes that I've had from other authors on this show, is the importance of having a very good editor. And there's different kinds of editors, right? Because
Yes.
there's editors. What kind of editors did you work with?
Well, she's kind of all singing, all dancing editor. She does content editing and copy editing and
Structural, because there are editors that also
structural.
work on the structure to
Yeah.
move things around, make sure that it's in the right flow. Yep.
Yeah, she is very good at, she'll read the entire book first, manuscript, and then she'll go through it line by line, word by word, and challenge me. She will challenge the character traits, she'll challenge the scene, she'll challenge the plot as she's going along.
Yeah.
And we work well together. Sometimes it's frustrating
I can imagine.
and maddening sometimes, but
Yeah.
in the end, it's my book, and I guess I make the final decisions. But she makes me think,
Yeah.
and I think that's so important.
You know, it's great that you say that at the end of the day, you are the author and you're the one that has to have the final say on your work, because it's very tempting to leave it to the experts, to the ones
Right.
who supposedly know better and can write a better story. But you have to trust your gut. You have to trust what the story is that you want to reveal,
I think
not
so.
the story that they have to do.
Yeah.
Okay, well, you wrote a couple of mystery books, and I was up actually on Amazon taking a look at some of the reviews, and I have to say I'm impressed by at least 100 reviews, I think, that I read on your mystery books. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Well done. How do you get so many reviews?
For the most part, they're organic.
Okay.
When the book first comes out, I'll get professional reviews. I'll go out and try and get a handful of newspapers or professional reviewers, so that I've got editorial reviews that I can attach to the book. And then from then
Do they
on,
usually respond?
No.
Professional editors? Yeah.
No.
Sorry, professional reviewers?
no, it's very difficult.
Yeah.
There are some that do all the time, but mainstream newspapers and magazines, no. Very
So
difficult.
where have you found? So aside from the organic, where have you found these reviewers to come forward and to actually leave you a review?
Yeah, there are organizations. I'm trying to think of one now. Kirkus Reviews, which is very
Right.
expensive.
Yep.
I've never used them, but it's that type of reviewer. There are a number like them that
Right,
are
like the
considerably
professional
cheaper.
reviews.
Professional
Yes,
reviewers,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, but a lot of your reviewers are coming from individuals. And
Right.
I think during our pre-interview, you mentioned that you worked with a publicist.
Yes.
Okay, so tell me how, because I know a lot of authors would love to do that, but they're not sure how to.
Yeah.
And so tell me what your relationship is with that, with the publicist, what they do for you, and how they help you with your books.
Yeah, I'm not sure he's a publicist. I don't know if that's the right term, but or
More
marketer
like
or
marketer.
whatever.
Okay,
Yeah.
a marketer.
But what he does, he focuses on ebooks, and my ebook sales outnumber my paperback sales by like 1,000 to 1.
Really?
So he focuses on ebooks, and he's got a process where he will put the ebook up free for a few hours.
Okay.
And what that does is it raises the profile on Amazon. And Amazon has algorithms that they use for deciding whether they should have, if you like this book, read this book,
Yes.
and that kind of thing. And so what that does is it changes the results of the algorithm, and
Okay.
then so your book gets a little higher profile, and if you're lucky, you can reach bestseller status for an hour or two, and so
Okay.
then they can never take that away from you. You're an Amazon bestseller.
Okay.
And so you can attach that label, and then he'll flip it to a paid book. And the process works. It's been successful with my two thrillers so far. He's not cheap, quite expensive in fact, but I've found that I've more than broken even. So
Okay, so it's for the investment that you're making,
Yeah.
you are at least recovering your costs, and
Yes.
it's raising the profile of your book, right? Which
Right.
is something that gets the book into the hands of people. Do you find that a lot of people just download the books as soon as they're available for free?
Oh,
Do they
absolutely.
really? So you
Yeah.
can track those numbers as well and see how
Yeah.
many. Yeah.
Yeah, you can through Amazon. You can
Yes.
figure out how many are free and how many are paid.
Okay.
And I'm sure there are people that just download free books just for the sake of downloading free books.
And eventually they'll read them. Eventually they'll put them
Well,
on the
hopefully.
readers. Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah.
Well, if you can believe we're down to 3 minutes together. I know that you are a traditionally published author, and you switched from that to become more of a self-published author. Can you tell me why you did that?
Yeah, it was kind of a hybrid publisher that I was with. I guess we missed the boat. And so hybrid means that you pay something up front, the publisher pays something up front, you kind of
Okay.
split the cost. And then the publisher takes more royalty than you would get if you're self-publishing. I found that I did all the work anyway.
The marketing work, you
The
mean,
marketing
especially?
work,
Yeah, I
yeah.
think every author can attest to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I didn't really see the point of paying his share of the royalty as well. So they went under ultimately, and I got my rights back, and so then I self-published.
Yeah.
I think if you're with a traditional publisher, you have the benefit of distribution, you have the benefit of getting mainstream reviews,
Yeah.
which is huge.
Yeah.
But if you're with a traditional publisher, you're probably at the bottom of their list unless your name's Stephen King or something. So, so I'm not sure there are advantages to both. But I don't mind doing the marketing and the promotion and that sort of thing. So yeah, I've decided to self-publish. I did have a hybrid publisher for my newest book, but I was too far down the line by the time we connected. I think he would have been a good fit.
Yeah.
But I've decided to self-publish it as well.
Yeah. Well, as we head down into the final few minutes of our time together, I want to ask you, as an author, you've had a long journey with different books and different ways of publishing. What's the greatest lesson that you have learned about yourself on this journey of being an author, and what would you advise others for our last minute together?
Well, as a writer or as an author, you're putting yourself out there. And I think the thing that was the biggest shock for me was, I'm not one to want the spotlight particularly, but you need the spotlight when you're an author. You need people to be aware that you've got a book, and you need to get out there and promote and that kind of thing. So that was kind of the biggest shock for me, I guess.
Yeah.
As far as advice, I say if somebody wants to write, they should write. And I think you have to find your own way. Like, there are things that work for me that may not work for someone else as an author, and vice versa.
Yeah.
So I think you have to find your own way and just do it.
And just do it.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, thank you. I really appreciate you sharing your story and your wisdom with me. I know you will touch a lot of authors with those words as well. Thank you all for tuning in to this episode, and we'll catch you on the next one of the Author's Journey. Bye for now.